Alright guys, welcome back to Valorant News. An absolute bombshell dropped on the Valorant scene yesterday with the confirmation that after much speculation during the off-season, Jinggg is back in the Paper X starting lineup. He was meant to be stepping away for his military service. That is no longer the case, and many reasons which I'll discuss here over the coming minutes. Jinggg is back in. What does this mean for Paper X? What does this mean for Monyet as well, especially given that players such as Pankara are also in a similar position? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Crazy day yesterday. Firstly, this I thought was kind of remarkable. If you guys are familiar with Counter-Strike, you'll probably know that many spots on maps over time have been given graffitis to commemorate legendary plays and moments. The Cold Zero jumping up on Mirage, the Olaf Ninja Defuse and also the Olaf Boost, but also the Ninja Defuse on Overpass. There's many other examples such as the Simple jumping into the site no scope on Cash and many others. So they often commemorate legendary plays, important plays in Counter-Strike history with such graffitis. Now in Valorant it seems like Riot have done or looking to do potentially going forward a similar thing. So this was a massively important round that has set the tone of the season so far. Sentinels eventually won this series 2-1. They needed to beat NRG here on the sunset if they were to go on to win the series, qualify for Masters Madrid, and therefore of course get the chance to go on to actually win it. Down 12-11, SEN TenZ popped a 3k here with the Omen on top of this spot here on the sunset, and that was enough to close out the round. Had he not got this 3k, had they have walked into the side uncontested, who knows if NRG win this game 13-11, and everything we've seen over the last few weeks actually doesn't happen. So it seems like they're going to, well, they've commemorated this in the game by these like boot prints basically on top of the spot where TenZ was standing. So this is really cool. Maybe there's an argument that they could have had something which was, was more TenZ related, or at least had something that showed that it was, him as a player rather than just this. But I guess the same could be said for other things. I just think it's a cool idea that they're doing this, right? That they're looking to commemorate important moments in Valorant history and legendary plays with similar ideas, because it just kind of combines even further the competitive and the more casual side of the game as Counter-Strike has done. Also, we've got to talk about Clove, because this may well be an agent that transcends the competitive and the casual play. Fun agent to play in ranked, absolutely, and quite probably viable in competitive as well. Now, there were rumours that Clove was actually also able to flash enemies after they died. Now we know that, the smoke can be used after death within a pretty sizable area of effect, but not absolutely everywhere. But apparently there was also a flash option as well that was eliminated during development. So Clove was meant to be like the strongest agent of all time apparently, and was heavily nerfed during development, and is still very strong. Like, the revive ability is pretty crazy. Here is Durka, by the way, playing some with Clove. So runs into the site here on split, goes down, but then hits the revive. And it's like, well, you managed to kill Durka once. That was a challenge in and of itself, but you're probably not going to get a second opportunity, right? So, yeah, very powerful agent, obviously, and I would say, as it stands, looks to be potentially viable in competitive play. There is always a difference between ranked and actual competitive matches, but the feeling is that Clove probably will have a place as it stands. And even here's Shazam playing a fair few games with Clove and having rather good success. Match MVP, similar to what we saw, of course, with TenZ the other day. Couple of quick things here on challenges as well. The matches continue over there. These are the recent results here. Zilz talking about the SEN Classic again, but yeah, these were the results of yesterday. Moist Shopify already at 2-0 as we saw yesterday. No team cocould join M80 though at 2-0 in the other group, because Winthrop University, they got the victory against Turtle Troops. That was a 2-0. This is a close series. I did say that, 13-10, 13-11, right? I did say that many of the top teams in Game Changer and Challenges, and maybe in Game Changer as well, to be fair, it's pretty stacked, like there's good teams at the top and the other teams are fighting for their lives. And it seems like Group B, though, is getting rather competitive. And also TSM, they got their first victory yesterday as well. They played up against the Glazers and they got the 2-0 dub. But this again was a close series, 15-13 on the Breeze and then 39 on the split. So some close competitive games here, and that Group B is looking to be kind of interesting so far, but there are clear favourites, of course, in that group, as you might well expect. But let's talk about Paper X, because so much speculation, even during the off-season, as to what the future of Jinggg was going to be. But it was known now for some time that Singaporean players, there's mandatory military service. For Korean players, this is also similar, but there are more exceptions. This is my understanding. I don't know, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that there are, generally speaking, more exceptions for Korean players. Faker and players like this are able to, as sports stars, athletes, whatever, able to get more exemptions. Whereas in Singapore, my understanding is that it's very difficult to get an exemption from military service that is mandated for a couple of years. So Jinggg, it seemed like it was going to be a guarantee that Jinggg was going to be out of the team. This was known during last season that it was going to be Jingg's final ever event, right, when he played at the World Championship. Presumably he could come back in a couple of years, but, you know, it was a big emotional moment. He then steps away. Monyet is then the man they bring in from Global Esports during the off-season, and the feeling is that, yeah, Jingg's gone, and maybe in a couple of years he can come back. But then, of course, he made that surprise appearance at the Africa TV tournament, stepped into their team, and it was like, wow, is this like a final hurrah, final send-off for Jinggg? Phenomenal player, and obviously it was kind of cool to see that. But the feeling was that, yeah, this is a done deal, and PaperX, they came third at Masters Madrid. Very solid performance. Lost to Gen.G, though, in the end, and Gen.G right now the strongest team in the Pacific. That may well, though, have changed, because the confirmation was there from PaperX yesterday, just as I released yesterday's video, actually, that Jinggg is back. So PaperX is happy to confirm that Jinggg will be returning to competitive play for Split 1. Following the due process for compulsory enlistment in Singapore, there have been new developments which allow Jinggg to actually compete. We're always prepared for this opportunity. You know, we've gone through all the processes, we're ecstatic, we're working with Jingg's documents and paperwork to make sure that they can be back as soon as possible. Now, how is this possible? So, as is described here, Jinggg returned to Singapore after last year's conclusion of the season to register for national service. He has been following the due process, which included medical examinations. It has been assessed that Jinggg has a lifelong medical condition that is managed with ongoing treatment. Upon medical evaluation and review, he is medically unfit for military service. PaperX has determined that his medical condition does not affect his ability to compete at the highest level of esports. This is a private and personal matter. They won't go into details, understandably, but yeah. That means that he's declared unfit for military service in real life. But however, in the game, very different story, right? We know that Jinggg is rather deadly in the game itself. So, yeah, remarkable turn of events. I imagine that Jinggg must have felt like this was a possibility, right? I mean, we don't know what this lifelong condition is, but if it's a lifelong condition that he has been aware of, PaperX has been aware of, and is managed by a certain treatment that is ongoing, that doesn't seem to affect his performance in the server, then I imagine there was a feeling that maybe they would grant him, you know, exemption for military duties. But as I say, it seems like often that's very difficult to come by, as we'll discuss in a second. So just before we get on to that, Monyet is gone, right? You've got to feel bad for this guy. Like, he came in, he's done his job. I think he did a really good job during the run to Madrid and during the run in Madrid. But and there was an argument that maybe Mindfreak underperformed, maybe he should go. But the chemistry those five have from last year, they want to maintain it. So Monyet's going to be going to the bench. Jinggg is going to come in. We'll discuss that more in a second. But for those who know about this, there was discussions about a PESF, the physical employment system that then grades you based on how severe this potential, you know, issue may well be. So you get graded from A to F, and often there are 6 grades. So this is what was discussed on the Reddit. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but this is just kind of what was talked about. That often if you have some sort of fitness issue, then you'll still do military service, but you will have some sort of physically, you know, less intensive position, which of course would mandate him to be away from playing. But to get completely excluded, that involves, you know, an F rating, which apparently is a very rare condition for a Singaporean to get. So, you know, there's 6 grades, but there's actually 12 grades in alphabetical order, and all this stuff. So, you know, I'm hoping that whatever has got Jinggg exempt here is not particularly concerning. You know, a lot of people would theorize maybe it's a heart condition or something, which for, you know, real activity may be, you know, maybe an issue. I don't really know. We're obviously speculating at this point. Whatever it is, of course, we're hoping that it's not going to be affecting his play going forwards. But I imagine, as PaperX said, this has been a thing for a long time. So I think if it was going to affect his play, they would have known by now. But it means that he doesn't have to complete the military service and is permanently exempt. So Jingg's back. It's locked in. This is a done deal. And Jinggg is back on the starting team. Lots of reaction to this, of course. As Boaster says, you know, this is the joke I made earlier, actually. They obviously haven't seen his raise. He's medically unfit for military service. And yeah, Jinggg explains it and says, yeah, I've been quiet about this because, you know, just following the processes. Thanks to everyone for your concern, but see you all in the server. So he's officially back, and Som says the same thing. He's back in business. It's going to be great entertainment to watch because Jinggg, phenomenal player. up there with Forsaken, obviously, in terms of how good they were last year, and Raze is most certainly still a viable option in the meta as it stands. So Jinggg back in W Gaming. Subrosa as well says a similar thing here in the replies, and this is now a locked-in deal. Welcome back. Jinggg moves back into the active roster. As I say, the last time that he played was in the Africa TV League finals, where they played Sentinels and lost, of course, 3-0, where he didn't have the greatest time, but he didn't play all the maps in the series. They were messing around with some things that tournament, to be fair, and then they played T1 shortly before that. Jinggg had a good performance on the map that he played on the Sunset. But you've got to feel bad for Monyet, right? Because this guy comes in, does the job that was expected of him. They finished third. Not, the best performance from a Pacific League team. They had their chances, right? I mean, obviously they played Sentinels in the lower final. They ended up finishing third, but now he's a reserve again. So it's tough. Now, for Monyet, it's quite interesting because there is a chance, like we haven't seen Paper X play yet again with their new roster. Is there a chance that their roster continues to underperform? Like, are they still going to be worse than Gen.G? We don't know. And if time progresses in a way that could happen, then Monyet might, have a chance to get back into that starting team. But it's a similar parallel to draw with the Pancada situation. The thing is for Pancada, though, is that he knows he's not coming back because Sentinels have shown promise with Zelsis long before they even qualified for Madrid and certainly after they won Madrid. So with that in mind, Pancada knows full well that he ain't coming back into that starting team. They've allowed him, Pancada, to explore options elsewhere, to go and take different steps in different directions. We talked about the Fury offer and that discussion, which hasn't really gone anywhere, but of course we've talked about Loud and Lev as potential options for Pancada as time may progress. For Monyet, it's a little bit more interesting because he may think, get me out of here, I want to go elsewhere and actually play. But also, are there many better options for Monyet out there, especially given that it's not impossible that this new Paper X roster, new old Paper X roster, doesn't click in the same way, doesn't quite get the results they want. But it's great news, I think, for the scene in general, because it was sad, no doubt, that Jinggg had to step away at the end of last season. Such a phenomenal player to watch and was a key reason as to why that Paper X team was so good to watch and also was so good in general. So we're going to see more of that this year, more of the best players in the world playing at the very highest level. But how's it going to, perform for their roster, right? Is it going to work out? Are they going to be able to recapture the magic they've had previously? What does it mean for Monyet? Big questions to be answered in the very near future. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.